Hello, and thank you for listening to my presentation, Read the Room, Negotiating in the Publishing Industry. The conflict I will be discussing today was a dispute between two companies in the literary world, Barnes& Noble, which is the largest bookstore retailer in the US, and Simon & Schuster, which is a publishing company that publishes over 2,000 titles per year. The issue they had was in 2013, Barnes& Noble requested Simon & Schuster lower their wholesale costs to allow them to compete with Amazon. Simon & Schuster denied, saying they could not afford to do that. So in retaliation, Barnes & Noble started charging Simon & Schuster more displays for their books, rather started charging them more for in-store displays of their books, and they stopped allowing their authors to do in-store promotions. Simon & Schuster's reaction to this was to do a public campaign about how Barnes & Noble was hurting authors and the publishing industry by demanding these lower costs. So the three strategies I recommend these companies use to move forward to find a solution are, the first is building relationships. According to the textbook, negotiation is not just a one-time transaction, it's an ongoing process. Invest in building positive relationships with colleagues, clients, and stakeholders. These two companies are in the same industry, so regardless of the outcome of this negotiation, they will still have to work together to some degree, so it's to their benefit to foster positive working relationships with one another. The next strategy would be effective communication. One element of that is clear and concise communication is essential for successful negotiation. Communication between two parties should always be straightforward so both parties understand what the other one is asking for. This helps find solutions more easily and ensures that resolutions occur that both parties are happy with. The other part of effective communication is active listening and empathy. These two companies are at odds. They both want to be profitable and want to work with one another, but they're being stopped by what serves their own businesses best. It's important that when they enter this negotiation, they're able to clearly hear what the other one is asking for and why it's important to that company. And finally, the last strategy is collaborative problem solving. Collaborative problem solving techniques such as brainstorming, active participation, and open communication can lead to innovative and mutually beneficial outcomes. Both these companies their actions had a negative effect on one another that led to this negotiation needing to happen. So they need to really spend time working together to find a solution. And it can be something they're both happy with. And while working together to problem solve, this will also help improve their communication as well as rebuild their relationship. So the negotiation plan that I have for Barnes & Noble is first to prepare. Preparation is the first step for any negotiation. They need to identify the common interests with Simon & Schuster so they can stay focused on that goal, things like book sales and advertising. They also need to create a business plan with goals and benchmarks that they can and cannot compromise on. It's important that they understand what they absolutely need for their company to be successful and where they're able to negotiate to come to a solution with Simon & Schuster. So with building relationships, they need to create and foster positive relationships with all publishing houses, and this will hopefully lead to lower costs and cross promotions in the future. They also need to manage their emotions during the negotiation. Since the tension is already high, they don't want to create more issues. Need to effectively communicate to be able to express to Simon & Schuster what they need to compete with Amazon and other online retailers, but they also have to be understanding for the reasons Simon & Schuster cannot cut costs and meet all of their demands. With collaborative problem solving, they need to be willing and open to an alternative business plan that allows them to be profitable and provide as many books as possible for their customers. And while it may be different than what they had planned at first, they need to be open to trying something new. For negotiation for Simon & Schuster, again, they need to spend time preparing, looking for common interests that they can focus on, like book sales and advertising their titles and authors. Again, I also included here, create a business plan. That's key for any negotiation technique. Company needs to go in knowing what will work best for their company and what they're able to negotiate with. With building relationships, they need to empathize Barnes & Noble's reasons for demanding lower wholesale costs. As well as stay positive and manage their emotions. They created a lot of negative press for Barnes and Noble, so they want to be sure to improve that relationship going forward and let them know that that won't be something they'll do in the future. And to communicate effectively by being able to express why they cannot lower costs, but they still want to work with Barnes and Noble. They also need to empathize with Barnes and Noble struggling to compete with Amazon. For collaborative problem solving, they need to be open to Barnes and Noble suggestions on how they can be profitable rather than being defensive about what they're able to do. And they need to stay focused on their common goals with Barnes and Nobles. If both of these companies are able to focus on common goals and find ways to support each other, they will definitely be able to find a win-win solution that will be successful. Luckily, in 2013, they were able to come to a resolution after a few months. During the time of the negotiation period, Simon and Schuster saw their author's sales decline, and they tried to hold out, but eventually did have to negotiate with Barnes and Noble. They were able to come to a deal with them, and in the past decade, they have not had any other disagreements. So it seems that whatever deal they came with, they were able to communicate effectively, rebuild their relationships, and collaborate to solve problems. And hopefully this continues for these two companies and there's no other need to negotiate in the future. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.